Do you wish you could get virtual attendees to turn their cameras on? Is engagement the number one issue on your virtual meetings? Do you want your meeting to be the most engaging virtual meeting? Well, welcome to the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. In this podcast, we'll talk to the top people around the world in virtual meetings and give you, the listener, the best ideas to host engaging virtual meetings. Make sure that you click subscribe so you can get the latest episode of the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. Now, let's welcome your host, the author of the #1 Amazon hot new release, Engaging Virtual Meetings, John Chen.
Well, John, this is the closest representation to Joy Lab that I've ever been in. Look at this sophisticated computer here. Welcome to Joy Lab, John. So over the last 3 days, you and I have been creating some epic virtual experiences, and we have been also debriefing Tony Robbins' facilitation techniques as well. And I'm just astounded by the diversity of experiences you have, leading gatherings, being a part of gatherings, but also coaching and different trainings you've done with NLP as an example. And yeah, I've just been soaking it in over the last 3 days. And I'd love for you to share, tell us a little bit about your facilitation experience and maybe some of the favorite events or gatherings you've been a part of. And you can just introduce yourself as well.
It's a little bit like party scientist tiramisu, where you're just soaking up all the coffee, with all the. My name is John Chen. I'm the CEO for Engaging Virtual Meetings. This is my 25th year in business. Prior to the pandemic, I spent most of my time doing corporate team building using geocaching, right, a high-tech scavenger hunt to teach team and leadership skills. And pandemic hit, and that whole face-to-face business went away. But in 2011, I wrote a book called 50 Digital Team Building Games. And
2011, everybody. 2011, when we were all using Facebook Messenger, this man was meeting online.
I still use Facebook Messenger. Oh, wait, that's my age. Okay, so so we put it there, but nobody would buy it beforehand. And then in the pandemic hit, I was able to take all that work and bring it back, and of course became some of my most important work. So that's what we've been doing over these last 2 years. Yeah, here's book one that just came out. And actually right underneath it here, I'll help you out, is we here in the lab, we have all the resources here. This is 50 digital team building games. Yeah, 2011, so was early on this trend on trying to make things happen. So in terms of facilitation experience, I want to go back. I'm one of 5 kids. And so you've met my sister now. You met some of my relatives, or some of my brothers and sisters, my siblings. And even though I'm the youngest, as I've gotten older, I've become the facilitator of the family. So that's one part, which is like when you have that many kids, you just got to facilitate all the time. But the second one really came around is when I asked the question, and the question was, I always knew I was supposed to do something, I just don't know what it is. Right? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah. It's the ongoing discovery of our life purpose.
Yeah, who do I want to be when I grow up, right?
Yeah.
So, and of course, everyone else answered like, I don't know, and me too. Like, I haven't decided. I don't know what it is either. And then one guy who, again, this is where the Robbins program comes up. I was in a Robbins program, and one guy who's an executive coach says, "Give me a weekend, and I'll tell you exactly what it is."
Okay, so an intensive weekend of discovering geoteaming, which was your geocaching scavenger hunt business. Is that right?
Actually, it was originally called Playtime Incorporated, right? And it was meant to be like, it was fun. That's the Playtime. And the Incorporated says that it was still really, there's business value here. We're just like, not just being entertained. We're actually doing something of value. And so that was its original name. And it was about to create life-changing adventures. And so that's how I started to decide to do that. And that path led me to organizations like AEE, which is the Association of Experiential education, which is basically the fancy name for learning by doing. And these are some of the top facilitators. If you've ever been to a ropes course, you probably met one of the people who was a member of this organization. And they're the ones who would take an experience and turn it into something transformational as opposed to just entertaining. And that's really where facilitation came into that. And they would do it with anything. Like they could do it with like 12 pipes or nails and a board or and that's what was really fun and fascinating is that they would take common, ordinary, everyday objects and transform somebody's life with it. And I'm like, oh, I want to learn how to do that. So the combination of being an Anthony Robbins, which teaches a lot of these life-changing skills, and the experience of like here are like I learned thousands of different kinds of experiences that's where I draw from. And the best part about it for me too, again, we were watching Robbins. You can see Robbins is pretty direct about some of his stuff. That's not my personal style. What I'd rather do is let people have an experience and draw their own conclusion. And if they draw their own conclusion, I think it's much more better than me telling you, be better, as opposed to you come back from this going, oh, I just did this thing, right? And here's exactly what I think I need to do to be better.
Yeah, well, one of the great skills of teachers is facilitating that self-realization, this very self-directed discovery of the insight, right?
Yeah.
We totally own the insight versus, oh, I'm just being told what to do or I'm just following directions, right? And when we have that insight ourselves through reflection and through, the integration process, like, hey, we're gonna cook eggs and then we're gonna debrief cooking eggs and we're gonna learn. Like, that's really cool. And so many experiences we have in life can be impactful and can shift our lifestyle, yet because we don't debrief them, because we don't reflect on them or just go back and realize what we did and how we thought and when we were on autopilot, we don't gain any value from it. But this idea of facilitating self-realization within the student, that leads them to own the insight and own the action plan as well, and just way more motivation to actually follow through.
It kind of comes around. I know you just went to a meditation recently, and a lot of meditation and other pieces like that talk about awareness, right? Presence and awareness. And so you can take common, ordinary activities like this, and if you do them with this mindset of this facilitation, anything that you can do, right? Like making a bed. It's like you're here in Seattle, right? They took throwing fish and took it to the highest order, right?
Do you want to explain what this group did? Because I've studied them.
Yeah. So this is a fish group, and it turned out to be the #1 corporate video, and they turned selling fish into a system that said, you can take any business. In fact, the most boringest of boring business, let's say selling fish, right? And bring it to life and delight people. And so here in Seattle, in the fish market, in Pike Place Market, it's like one of the oldest markets that are around. They'll come out there and they interact with people. The thing is a show. And it is really, really funny. If you've ever stood back there, like, one, they have a crowd, so there's energy around there. Number two is there's always something happening that's really funny. Three, though, they're actually doing a lot of business, right? They're selling a lot of fish, and people will go to their fish market. This other fish market right down a block for them has the exact same fish, sometimes for less money, and people won't go there. They'll go to this one because of the experience. And so things like this, you could go, and we do this on our scavenger hunt because we made a deal with them. Like, you go there and you say, I would like to catch a fish. So they'll take you behind the counter, right? And they'll take a 30-pound salmon, right? And they'll yell something like, salmon 30 pounds coming. And all the other people go, salmon 30 pound coming. And you're like this, going, oh my God, what's about to happen? They will throw you a 30-pound fish, right? And you got to try and catch it. And let me tell you, everyone will tell you it's wet, it's slimy, it's scaly, right? It's hard too. You grab it and a lot of people go like this and it goes shoo, and it goes out of here. And that's even funnier. They actually throw away this fish. They can't sell this fish because it's been like touched and thrown and all this other stuff, but it creates entertainment and they more than make up for it. And it's one of the greatest experiences. And again, we always shoot slow-mo. So you'll see slow-mo of like this fish coming. And sometimes you'll see somebody fumble and drop the fish. And that becomes the highlight experience in video for like the whole day. So anyways.
You've chosen the best example. This group created a whole philosophy around selling fish at a fish market, and then created a highly successful corporate program and philosophy and book. And it all stemmed from just a fish market, and the principles were crystallized from how the people worked at this fish market. And so yeah, perfect example for how to create principles and insights from very ordinary activities. And I'm a huge advocate for this because I journal at the end of every day, and I will do really ordinary things and I will find lessons in them.
Yeah.
And so just this process of reflection, and one thing you do at the end of your scavenger hunts, you mentioned that you have this GoPro system where you record people while they do one of these scavenger hunts. And I think that when we're able to listen to ourselves over again, and when we're able to watch ourselves in retrospectively, we can gain even more insight as well, and that really facilitates this learning process. So I want to we could talk for 3 hours about all the events and experiences you've facilitated. You just led a workshop on how to be a great virtual MC. You've led virtual karaoke nonstop since 2020, and I was just involved in it last night, singing as Britney Spears, and you were my backup dancer.
Oh my gosh.
I want to jump into some questions about creating joy as a facilitator, and I have 4 questions.
Okay.
The first question I have pertains to groups.
Yeah.
And I'd love for you to share a tool or principle that you regularly apply to bring joy into a group environment.
Joy. So I think one of the key aspects of joy is a simple principle of around engagement, which is, of course, the one key word that I'm advocating for here. And that is, this meeting is different because you're here. Right? If I could hold this meeting and have it and not have you here, then I should be sending you a video. So let's not do a meeting. But everything changes when you're here, and that adds for every single person. That's not just you, that's just every single person. I think that brings people joy. To me, I think one of the simplest things is that people want to be acknowledged, right? Like, I'm here, right? And then they want to see they have an effect. I mean, why else do we do what we do? We want to help make the world better, right? Contribute our part. And so I do that to facilitate joy, is that I do one of our key principles is engage and interact with everyone before the meeting's done, even if your camera's off, even if you're muted. I don't care, right? There are hundreds of ways for you to interact before the end of this program, and I think that's one of the ways to bring joy. I think the second one, though, to bring joy here too, is do unusual things that are just really fun. Because here on Zoom now, people have established a pattern. They click on Zoom, right? They start talking, they share their screen, and then the meeting's over. And if you could do anything that's different than that, like that's really fun, then we'll look for it. So one of them that we discovered is, like, here on Zoom and other platforms, you can rotate your image, right? And it sounds simple, but almost nobody knows this feature. You just go to video backgrounds, and on the top right, there's a little square with an arrow, right? We show people, and like, it's instant joy. It doesn't matter how old they're. Like, anyone who's like 20 to 80 years old goes, oh my gosh, this is funny. Right? And again, like, I get my whole class to turn upside down, and then you wave your arms. And if you turn my video upside down, it looks like we're hanging upside down from our legs again. And then there's like this joy of a child. I mean, it goes even as far back. One of the programs I did was called The Journey. And we would take 23 people up Mount Rainier, right? As a metaphor. We took Mount Rainier and turned it into the learning class as a metaphor for achieving a goal you have no idea how to achieve. And one of the key joy experiences is something called glissading. Do you know what glissading is? Okay, glissading is when you climb up, and on the way down, basically there are parts in the on the glacier that are like big slides. Like we're talking 1,000 feet or more. And if you get garbage bags and put them around like your pants, you can go even faster, right? And so you get on there and like, I swear, 40, 50, 60-year-old people, like CEOs of company, right? Super important, they go down there and they scream like small children because they're sliding down, right? And sometimes you get going like uncomfortably really fast. And but that brings people joy. It goes right back to like childhood. Why are there slides? Because we love that. We love like whatever that experience is of like, moving. So
yeah, what's coming to mind is just how we don't need to just rely on the intellect for joy, for emotions. We can just leverage physical experiences like elevating our heart rate, going down a slide, climbing something. And so I think, just as we were talking about while watching the Robbins film, physiology is really the fundamental input for, our thoughts and our performance, our relationships. If our physiology and our nervous system is stressed, then, it's going to be a lot more challenging to access creative thinking and whatnot. The other thing you mentioned, and I think this is really interesting, you mentioned acknowledging that this meeting is special because you're here.
Yeah.
And I think there's something important there about, and I often do this, I often get people to acknowledge the impermanence of the gathering and that we will never come together in this way again. Potentially.
It's the ultimate FOMO, right? This thing will never happen exactly like this right now.
Yeah, and it's this appreciation also that we're all coming together, we're all spending time together, and this is a unique opportunity, and it's different because it's a very unique group. And I think what that can do is that can cultivate some of the presence and engagement and just put people in a mindset of not taking it for granted and not treating a meeting with an eye roll. Because I was not, through COVID, I was just not impressed by too many virtual gatherings, especially. Certainly, I'm just thinking, is it easier to engage people virtually or in person? And it might actually be easier to engage people virtually because all the tools are available.
I think it is. There's definitely so this is my theory around it. It's like that virtual can be as good as in person, and sometimes it can be better. All right, and that's what we should be looking at. This is a great question. Instead of most people are questioning like, how do I avoid Zoom fatigue? And of course, when you ask that question, all you get is Zoom fatigue. But if you ask this question, which says, where is virtual better? Right? Where is virtual better? So some of the things that you saw, number one, we can gather around the world, right? We had guests from Germany, New Zealand, Australia, Philippines, and they can be here with us. So I think that's the number one thing. The number two thing is that, like documenting, like setting up cameras for every individual in a place is really expensive. And here you just click a button now because it's all done because everyone already has a camera and a voice. And now I know that he's the party scientist. Now, if you look, there are these opportunities that are starting to show up, such as, again, my friend Rachel Kossar has a company called Virtual Sapiens, has a thing called Sidekick. And it's a Chrome extension, and it runs with Zoom at the same time, and it will watch your camera. And again, it's not recording, but it will evaluate your data and do things like, if your head is off, it will eventually give you a prompt to say, hey, maybe you should come back to center. Wow. Right? Or like if you're talking, it's listening to your mic, and so it says, if you're talking but you're doing this, like you're spacing out, it says, you should consider eye contact. It'll give you a little icon of eye saying, when you talk to the group, make eye contact because it's really going to help the other people on the other side. So it gives you these nudges. And then like what we're talking about, like things that I haven't yet seen. But imagine if there was an engagement program running as for me, the facilitator, which now can see things I can't see, which is like on camera, are people's heads down or other things like that. What it does maybe is listens to the audio and gives me a map of when people talk to and a number and saying, and identify, like this person says, this person has never said anything.
Can I just speak on this?
Yeah.
With the use of technology, we can create tools that really optimize engagement because so much more data is available. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's the data in this form. And again, you're getting the data in an in-person meeting, but you're getting it in analog. And therefore, it's hard to process because you have to first convert it and all this other stuff, which means you would have to have all this equipment. But here, it's already all here. It's already a bunch of ones and zeros, and now you can do it. And just like everything, your meeting would only get better if, one, you get the appropriate tool, and two, you get a person who can use that tool correctly to make the meeting better. Because you could still get all this data and ignore somebody, right? And we already know this is happening. Like if you've ever chatted somebody in a meeting and they didn't reply to you going, hey, Jacques, I'm here, and then I got nothing from you, it means to me that most likely your chat's closed. So even though I'm trying to communicate with you, you haven't registered it. But if you even do something and saying, oh, hey, John, I see your chat. Thank you so much for that. That is like a huge piece of acknowledgement that tells me that you're paying attention to this, and therefore the chats now too also have a way to alter the course of this meeting because you're watching that. So yeah, anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. And the principle here I think that we're talking about is in this process of optimization, it's really important to have feedback.
Yes.
But not only feedback, instantaneous feedback. And I think the future of virtual meetings and virtual gatherings will include some sort of instantaneous feedback on potentially the emotions in the room even, or the tonality of the speaker, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this whole new frontier on the horizon where we as facilitators and gatherers can start to optimize for what we want to optimize. If we want people to be in a certain state, or we're looking for a certain proportion of turn taking and airtime usage. So that's wonderful. That's futurist.
Got one piece to add to that too, though. It's not only feedback. You start looking for feed forward. Right? And what I mean by feed forward, it could start to predict things that you might need to do to make this meeting better. Right. So again, that's the feedback is saying somebody hasn't talked. The feed forward is, really see if you can engage this person out here. Right. These 3 or 4 people haven't done this, or it gives you suggestions. Here is a suggested thing that you could do to ask them, which would still allow them to feel safe but included.
And this is why when we have a co-facilitator with us at a gathering, I mean, that's really the physical form, especially if you establish consent to provide each other with instantaneous feedback, then you can have that co-facilitator, communicate some of that to you so that you can engage the wallflower or deal with the conflict that's arising. So second question related to joy. This is more about your relationships, your friendships, human connections. What is something that you apply regularly to create more joy in your interactions with humans? You're not in a facilitator role.
So joy in every day. Well, I think the easiest one is humor. Right? I mean, I love humor. I study all the comedians. I'm looking for techniques. I've actually done, we talked about a story. I have actually done stand-up once. And I actually took improv. I will say this, taking improv classes, whether or not you're a good improver or not, I think is the number one lesson I tell all of my facilitators. And the reason why improv lessons are so useful for bringing joy is that it will teach you how to let go. And what I mean by let go is like, one, you always got to be studying the present moment. And number two, improv will tell you that if you try and force a joke, right, it is not funny. It will die on the stage, and you will learn that. So like the harder you try, the worse it gets is one of the phrases I picked up from improv. But improv, like bringing joy, we did some improv last night, and like it was this, it's called freeze. So basically, someone would start something, you say freeze, and somebody would pick it up. And in the end, right, Jacques had a story that we made about him that he had a dungeon rave, right? He doesn't really have one yet, okay? Not yet. But it was funny because that was the improv, was somebody took it in that direction. And that was the last thing I was thinking about. And it's the funniest thing. because, right, with Jacques, it's like, I don't know, it's funny. Like, imagine him having a dungeon rave. Okay, oh, that would be hilarious in his house. So anyway, so that's why I think, and everybody now, like, this is the inside joke. We're still running the inside joke. Anybody who was in that moment, if you said dungeon rave, they would laugh. Like Maxi Pads is the other one, right? With another one of our speakers.
Selling the passport is the other one.
Oh yeah, selling your passport for 2 million Canadian dollars. He was just making a joke about that. So all of those things, because they're funny, right? They continue to bring joy, and they use comedic principles, right? Comedic principles is the return or callback, which is you go back to something but in a new context, and it's funny. And so, yeah, so I do that with joy. I think the other thing that I would do personally for joy is to just celebrate the other person. And sometimes, I end up finding that I have to celebrate people, especially when they start, quote unquote, beating themselves up or down, when they're just doing this, like, oh, I'm not strong enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not beautiful enough. Right? And most of the time I have to start the joy right there and just tell them, number one, that's ridiculous. Number two, this person was on television, so they're amazing. Or number three, look at all the things that if you sit there and you acknowledge for them on the outside, and some people need this. Like, I'll personally need this. Sometimes I need people on the outside to acknowledge something, and it could be something that I know, but I take for granted.
Oh, certainly. No, I coined the term for myself, toxic self-improvement, and it's this idea of continually being dissatisfied because you want to be better, right?
Yeah.
And so I used to do that a lot, and then I had someone in a retreat in Guatemala tell me that they see me as a rock star, and it totally changed my perception of myself after seeing that.
See?
I want to emphasize what you're getting at, because when someone's beating themselves up and expressing self-limiting beliefs, there's an opportunity to go into that and explore those beliefs and explore the logic or the illogic of those beliefs. And what's coming to me right now is the importance, like when we're in a good mood and when we have positive emotions, it almost can facilitate a deeper process of introspection versus if we're in a really sad, demoralized mood.
Yeah.
So when we have a good state, that process of facilitating someone's, critique of their own beliefs could be very generative. And, so positive thinking could be, the toxic positivity. Well, if toxic positivity is stage one, and then stage two is exploring why you believe this about yourself and why you're feeling this way, then you could actually potentially investigate deeper than if you were to just try without any sort of positive mood or energized state. Back to what you said about improv, I think this is great, and it's on the theme of getting out of the intellect. It's about using the imagination, using the right brain, and it turns out that human connection is very much like a right brain process. It's very emotional. A lot of it is subconscious. It's emotional cues. It's mirroring. So what improv does is it helps us learn how to use the right brain and listen, right? Because the artist, real good artists, are just listening for things that pop into their heads and then building off of them instead of shutting them down. Like, that's what artists are doing. And, when we were watching this film, Tony Robbins, he says, it just comes through me. I don't know where it comes from. It just happens. That's what he says. It just happens.
Yes. And so I think in improv around that, you have to train yourself to do that, which is to follow your gut and your instincts. And it's something that makes us uniquely human is you can take your life experiences, right, and process that and come up with the response with that. And you're basically, this is where the brain's really cool, because it's cataloged all your stuff in your life, even if you don't remember it, but it's there somewhere. And then it comes around with that. So like here's a great example. Ella was in our conference, right? And she comes in there and we're doing voice warm up. So she wants me to do some siren thing that sounds like woo, right? That's like a voice warm up. But she made a Beyonce joke before that, right? So what's the number one Beyonce song?
Single Ladies.
Yeah, Single Ladies. Yeah. So unbeknownst to her, because I have all this equipment, this is what the improv is telling me. She goes, oh, she wants me to do this siren thing, right? And like, that's like, I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to do this. It's going to be really funny. So I'm queuing up single ladies on my iPad, right? And then she goes, and she's still talking away on this thing, so she can't see that I'm doing it, right? And she goes, okay, John, are you ready? And I'm like, I'm ready. And then she goes, all right, do this voice drill. Single ladies, single ladies, single, and you can see everybody in the gallery is hilarious, and they're all doing this, and people are doing this, right? And that's improv, right? She wasn't expecting it. We didn't plan this out. But we created a moment that was like universally funny. And there was my instinct telling me it could have flopped, right? I like, let's think about 100 ways this could have gone wrong, right? Oh, you're being gender specific. You're degrading women, right? Like, what about marriage and the sanctament of that? Luckily, if you get the right kind of humor and you are connected, right, with the people, they're like, oh, I get it. He was just trying to be funny. And then give you the grace for it. And so everyone thought it was funny, right? And Ellie goes, oh my gosh, you're just killing me, John, right? and of course I did the voice drill after that. But that's a great example of a moment that was improv that is combined with my analog part, my intuition saying, let's do something funny. And the second part of it is saying the digital part. I'm going to queue up Beyonce's Single Lady. And by the way, for those who are wondering, I have an ASCAP license that allows me to play copyrighted music in a paid program. So now that opens up the door to do funny jokes like this. So that's a behind the scenes improv and how you create a moment. With a group.
Yeah, no, I love it. It incorporates impersonation and incorporates music. It refers back to what someone said, right? I mean, likely the most impactful improv is it shows someone that we're paying attention to them, right? And so if we can surprise people with something that they mentioned or something that's really important to them, then it's just they feel seen and heard as well, and they're laughing. So I want to jump into the mind and body as our final two questions. And I first want to focus on cognition. And we talked a little bit about your studies of NLP when you were attending Tony Robbins events. And actually, you were a coach and you were a team lead for these events where people pay a lot of money. With cognition, is there a tool that you regularly use to prevent some of the mental suffering?
Oh. This is a great question. This is what I call the dark side of empathy, right? And you have to be empathic and have empathy to help people, number one. And two, the danger is, ask anybody in the medical field or the mental health field, is sometimes we, as humans, to try and help other people, take on some of their stuff. And I think that, and I've had to have a lot of training. I mean, and you can't really, quote unquote, train for it. I mean, you have to have experiences with it, and you have to develop your own practices. And after, usually what happens too is you have a challenging experience, and you need to ask some other people who are really good at this. So, some of the things that you have to do is, this is like the self-care of helping others. And the self-care of helping others is that you got to help others, and you can't help them so much that it's to the detriment of yourself. Right? I mean, let's take parenting, right? Parenting, there are some people who detriment themselves to help their kids, right?
Yeah, and I think a big piece of this is taking full responsibility for someone's health and well-being versus releasing that responsibility.
Yeah, and so again, when we're helping people, I've had this part where I worked with somebody and they had a significant childhood trauma, right? It was pain and suffering of, like, I think losing somebody. And I can feel it in my gut too. Like a lot of times when you're doing work, you will start to feel things that the client is feeling if you start to get connected with them, right? And that's good because now you can identify what it is. And at some point you have to protect yourself because you can't take it all on. If you take it all on, you're going to be in the same state they are. And usually this person that I was talking to was very sad, very depressed, right? And I can't help them if I get into that state, which goes right back to what we talked about. Like, if you're sad and depressed, you can't really change the world. So I do have to protect myself from it. So some things that you can do is one is to think about it like flow, right? Which is like you can open the pipe, right, and like try and take on somebody's stuff, right? And if you feel like that's not going to help you, you can dial it back so that you know this is what they're feeling, but I don't have to feel all of it. And you have to stay in some form of control with that so that you can continue to help them. Again, you have to stay in a resourceful state to be helping them. I mean, other things that people have done have made protective bubbles or things like that. So you think about this. So again, where you don't want to shield yourself so much that you're not connected with this other person, but you do want to protect yourself around that. And I think that's one of the ways that you get through those experiences. I'm trying to think if there's something else with it is often too is that you need to start moving them into a more positive state. So once you need to sometimes get them there so they identify what challenging place that they're in, and then what you can do is start to work with them to get out of it. And that's why you need to stay in a powerful state. You can't really guide them unless you're there and you're saying, here, come walk a little bit here and come hang out with me.
I love this. The dark side of empathy is that when we are depressed and sad, we cannot actually help sad and depressed people as well.
No, you got to help yourself first.
Yeah. And so holding our own physiology and positive mood can help us help others better. And I like, that visual picture of the bubble. And I just, for me, it's quite automatic. Like, I feel like empathy is a switch in my brain. And I set the intention to be really present with someone and to really feel what they're feeling, or I set the intention to reflect negativity. Mm-hmm. And especially when I'm throwing street parties and flash mobs, there's a lot of negativity that I just have to reflect. And in fact, I'm so good at it now that when I experience negativity, it induces laughter. Like, it makes me laugh how people get upset when I'm dancing. Yeah. It's just kind of crazy to me. So yeah, the dark side of empathy, there's also a lot of there's a big argument for the dark side of empathy being, empathy is illogical. It focuses on single humans instead of statistical data sets. So empathy is not statistical in that we would rather save one baby than save 1,000 babies that we don't see. Yeah. So if we're trying to make rational decisions for the benefit of the whole, then empathy is not really a good, it's not a good decision-making tool. Now, when we're relating one-on-one, I do advocate for a lot of empathy because I also know that sorrow can transform into joy really quickly, especially when two people are really having a beautiful moment of understanding and witnessing. So thank you, John. So everyone, avoid eye contact at all costs. Don't touch each other because their negativity will spew all over you. So make sure you have a conversation with your back to them. So my final question. Actually, we have two more questions. John, I'm curious, with your physical body, we've talked about physiology a lot. I'm curious, are there any techniques that you use regularly or that you use in your gatherings to alter people's physiology or your own physiology so that you can maintain energy, positive emotions?
Yeah, I mean, one is myself. Well, there's a ritual. All right, we were saying that Tony does it too, but basically there's a ritual that I'll do before I get on any virtual.
Can we just impersonate what Tony does again?
I'll do mine. Watch, you haven't even seen mine. That's right. He does a spin. Yeah, mine is there's a collection of words and things that I would say and do that I do before I go on. It sounds something like this, right? I create the juicy life of my dreams with love and joy. I beam with intelligent action, outrageous fun like that. It is done.
Can you slow that down once more? Can you say that once more? Slow it down.
I don't know if I can do it slow down. Let's see. Because I'm talking about I create the juicy life of my dreams. With love and joy, I beam. With intelligent action and outrageous fun like that, it is done.
Wow. The rhyming really secures it into your memory, and then you also have the body incorporated into it. And you do this before your big productions.
Anything I'm going to speak at, right? So, and it could be sometimes a small movie meeting, or sometimes it's like 1,200 people. And if it's 1,200 people, one of your jobs as a speaker is to fill the room. So I imagine myself like with whatever I have, like trying to fill the room so that, you know, you got to make your personality big enough so you're reaching those people way back. I don't want those people back there, right, to suffer because they're not that close, because it turns out, like in quantum science, technically you can connect with people, because like in virtual, we've been showing, we can connect with people in the Philippines and they can feel just as much energy as I can if you do it right. And so anyway, so that's the reason why I do it. Its name is called incantation, but the reason for it is to put yourself into a top state so that I'm in a top state, therefore I can do that. And by the way, for some meeting places, I'll have that level of energy, and then when I get on stage, I'm not going to show that level of energy to you because that's not the right audience. I'll come in and be scientific or whatever it is, you know, professional. What I'm going to match where that audience is to create rapport with them and then move on. And now other audiences, right, are crazy. Right, I can bring that too, but I just want to make sure that you know that I'm bringing that energy, and then I will morph it into whatever the thing that I need to do. Now, I think to bring energy to the group, I think there's two things. One we were doing was matching and mirroring, right? Which is anytime you can get your audience in sync with you, right? That's key. And so if you do anything like there, right? You know, you just say, hey, good morning, right? Hey, everyone, just raise your hand and just wave at me and say good morning. Good morning. So you get the whole audience. Sounds very innocuous. What you're secretly doing is putting everybody in that audience in connection with each other at a small bit at a time. All right. And then now you can do other things, like now we're talking about music and dance, right? So music, dance, and movement. So if you can get people to stand up, right? If you can actually get them to move around, if you can get them to, if you can use music. Again, I love in music, in a virtual meeting or even in a real meeting, you can play 5 notes of a popular song and it will change the state of the room. And that's why I think musicians are still so powerful and should be valued in our community. And that
they'd be more powerful if they learned how to facilitate too.
Yeah, well, but no, wait, listen. Some great musicians are already facilitating, and they're not doing it in the way that we do it. Like so here, like this one, right? You know, we did Queen last night. Freddie Mercury gets up front of the crowd, and he goes, Deo, and the whole crowd spontaneously goes, Deo, and they just follow him. He's facilitating. Right? You've seen Bobby McFerrin probably do that, right? He's just making people make nonsensical sounds, but they create music. Great musicians are already great facilitators.
Yeah. Yeah. I need to go to some more concerts because I often just witness celebrity worship. So, final question. We're going to talk about wisdom, and I'd love for you to share, as a way to finalize this laboratory experiment with the fancy equipment, what is the greatest life advice you've given or you've received?
Here, let's go to the computer.
Let's do a few experiments here.
Greatest advice. You know, I think it comes from the number one question. We talked about how powerful questions are.
Questions focus our attention and thoughts.
Yeah, and that a quality of your life is the quality of the questions that you ask. And the number one question that I get to, I ask every single person I work with, is, what do you want? What do you want? They're 4 words, and they're so powerful because quite often either they don't know. What do you want? I don't know. Right? Or what they think they want is this thing, but the more I ask questions, it turns out they need this thing. So for instance, in the team building business is, what do you want? I just want my group to have fun. Now, if you ask the questions that go along with it, going, why do you want them to have fun? Now you can start to hear some of the story. Like, you know, we just laid off a third of our group, and we're all completely remote and we all feel disconnected, right? And this person got COVID and blah, blah, blah. But see, they started here with fun. And in the reality, this is not what they really wanted. They wanted something else, right? They need because they off a bunch of people in their company. What they really need is some healing, right? And then it's funny. This is actually something weird that I learned over 25 years of team building, is that I'm actually one of the greatest predictors of a recovery of an economy, right?
All right, everybody. This podcast is not licensed by the Securities Commission.
Now, the reason why this happens is because nobody calls for team building when you're firing people, right? Yeah. So when the economy starts to crest up, but you don't know it yet, the news hasn't caught up here, my phone starts to ring, because now all these groups call and they tell me, we just had to lay a bunch of people off. And the manager's number one thought is, what can I do for the people who are still here, but they're emotionally battered because, some of their friends are gone. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's a true thought. And that's one of the reasons why they call me in the upswing of the business, is to say, what can I do to rebuild my team at that stage? So anyway, that's what it really gets into there. That question, what do you want? And that what do you want can apply to so many things. And if you, we now can get metaphysical, it should start in your own life, which is, what do you want? And if you haven't decided, then take a moment, turn off this tape right now, or stop watching this video, and maybe write 2 or 3 other things. You're unique as a human. What the things you want are totally different than what somebody else wants, what Jacques wants or what I want. But it's on you. And if you can actually clearly define them, then of course your odds of actually getting them are much higher. So what do you want?
Well, isn't that a ridiculous question? Because, what the basic human psychology tells us is that we want money, sex, and power.
Then go get money, sex, and power. That's fine. And be specific about it. How much money? $1 million. How much sex and which position? Right? And what kind of power do you want? Deadlift 400 pounds or yeah. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, well, it's just... It's the contrast of being in a sea where the waves are just pushing you in random directions and the winds are pushing you anywhere you end up, versus having a compass and having a sail and having a map, right? And so often we just don't pause. In the Robbins film we just watched, he says, often we don't take the time to design our lives. Yeah. And so we're essentially in a rowboat in the middle of the sea, just getting pushed around because we don't have that life vision. And, one thing I recommend to all my friends is this life quotient quiz by Mind Valley. And the last category of life that it asks you about is your life vision. And one of the questions in that category is, do you have a specific plan for manifesting your life vision? And I'm like, hell no, I don't got a plan. I don't even know what my life vision is.
Of course.
And
right?
So I wrote it out, and now I feel clear. I know what I want to do, and I'm probably going to rewrite it soon. So nominating everyone listening to write a life vision, and also when asking yourself this question, what do you want? Ask 5 whys. Go to the depths. Don't stay on the surface. Don't talk about physical things. What do the physical things actually do for you? And this comes back to just what needs do we have as humans? And guess what? The greatest need that I think leads to the most fulfillment is feeling a sense of belonging.
Yes.
And feeling not only included and tolerated, but celebrated. There's a different stages of belonging. And the first stage of belonging is being seen and being heard and being acknowledged. And then over on the other side, there's admiration, there's celebration. And the community that I want to manifest in my life is a community where we mutually admire each other and see each other as powerful, autonomous, driven, change makers. Yeah. So last words for this episode. John Chen, you want to close it up?
While this coronavirus has been tough for most of the world, I've actually really personally, to be honest, enjoyed the last 2 years. And here's why. While coronavirus decimated my original business of face-to-face team building, which I love, I found the purpose inside of this. And again, it was something that I've been working on for over 20 years, but the world wasn't ready for it, right? We've been trying to get people on virtual, and they were flat out were just like, well, no, you got to fly here. And now the world like caught up to this thing that I saw a long time ago. And to me, my life is better for it. And my life has this purpose that's even stronger than it was. Like in face-to-face team building, I have lots of competitors, there's lots of stuff. I don't know, and it's hard to stand out. Here in the virtual world, there's still very few pioneers around in here. And there's still lots of really bad virtual meetings. I mean, like horrible. And so I know that I'd be happy to finish my set of life work inside of here. And knowing too, I didn't, throw away all this other stuff. All this facilitation and other things got me ready to apply it to this digital arena. And again, this is a place where me personally, my authenticity is better here. Because again, I trained with some of the top ropes course facilitators in the world. And that's where they thrived. They thrived in the analog in-person world. And many of them couldn't transfer. They didn't want to do technology because they didn't like it, right? But me, I'm already there. And so this is what's giving me purpose and has allowed me to experiment. And every day I wake up with excitement and wonder and looking for, what's a new way that we can create this, right? Some form of joy, in this virtual world. And so I just want to leave you with that sometimes the world's greatest tragedies and challenges are sometimes your pathway to your greatest growth and life.
The obstacle is the way. Thank you, Dr. Chen. And I mentioned doctor because I think you do have a PhD in virtual meetings, or you should at least create the first PhD program. Congrats. Goodbye, everybody.
See you from the lab. This is John Chen, the author of the Amazon #1 hot new release, Engaging Virtual Meetings. I personally want to say thank you for listening to the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. It is my passion to help you eliminate bad virtual meetings. Make sure that you click subscribe so that you can get the latest episode of the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast with all of the latest ideas. Hey, I want to meet you. If you want to talk about a virtual meeting challenge, or if you want to be the next guest on the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast, just go to engagingvirtualmeetings.com/meet. That's engagingvirtualmeetings.com/meet, MEET, and find your best time to meet up. Thank you, and I look forward to engaging with you online.